Oh, this is red enough. You totally matched them, yeah. They were yeah. All right. All right, welcome everyone to our Land Use Committee meeting of Monday, April 9th, 2018. I'm Katie Tang, chair of this committee. Our clerk is Victor Young. To my left is Supervisor Safai, and to my right is Supervisor Jane Kim. And from SFGov TV, I'd like to thank Jem Smith and Jesse Larson. Mr. Clerk, are there any announcements?
Yes, please make sure to silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Completed speaker cards and copies of any documents to be included as part of the file should be submitted to the clerk. Items acted upon today will appear on the April 17th Board of Supervisors agenda unless otherwise stated.
Thank you. Can you please call item number 1?
Item number 1 is the ordinance amending the electrical code to correct the title for low voltage lighting section and conform it to the title in the California Electrical Code.
Thank you. I think we have Paul Ortiz from DBI here, or someone else.
Hi, actually, I'm Cheryl Rose. I'm Acting Chief Electrical Inspector, and I'm here to say, after looking over the proposal, I have absolutely no objections to it. It makes sense. There's nothing substantive to it, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. I did look over the legislation. It looked like it wasn't anything substantive, but could you just maybe spend a minute to explain why we need to fix this, or what happened and why we're making this change today?
I looked back a couple of code cycles. This was an old title to this section, and I think as we decided that we wanted to amend it, we looked at the article, not so much at the title, and somehow the title from 3 code cycles ago just carried through to now. It doesn't make sense anymore.
All right. Well, I am glad we are fixing that then. And with that, do we have any other questions, comments from colleagues? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll go to public comment on item number 1. Any members of the public? Okay. Seeing none, public comment is closed. Can we get a motion on item 1? Anyone? Motion. With recommendation. All right. Thank you. We will do that without objection. Item 2, please.
Item number 2 is an ordinance amending the plumbing code to prohibit the use of circuit venting unless approved as an alternative engineering design.
Thank you. And this is again brought to us from DBI.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Steve Pinelli. I'm the Chief Plumbing Inspector. This change, routine change, is the reason why we're bringing it forward. We actually thought it got heard already and it was already passed through, but we were told that it wasn't. This is a change to circuit venting to allow it for just specifically for certain installations and people to come forward with their types of plans if they plan to make changes to the venting system. The reason why we have it is we have combination waste and venting system, well, combination waste and storm systems. So we have multiple venting systems that are going on and installations that happen, and that's the reason why we're prohibiting this to just special circumstances.
Okay. And also, from my understanding, we're also a little bit different from the state plumbing code, again, because of our unique topographical conditions. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So I didn't see any issues with this one as well. Any colleagues, questions, concerns? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll go to public comment now for item 2. Okay. Seeing no public comment is closed. All right. Can we get a motion on item 2?
Motion to move forward with recommendation.
Okay, and we will motion to move forward with positive recommendation. We'll do that without objection. Item 3, please.
Item number 3 is a resolution adopting findings under the California Environmental Quality Act, the CEQA guidelines, and San Francisco Administrative Code, Chapter 31, including the adoption of a statement of overriding consideration and a mitigation and monitoring reporting program related to the funding of the Biosolids Digester Facility project.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if, okay, we have a legislative aide from Supervisor Cohen's office, Brittany Chiquata here.
Thank you, Chair Tang. Good afternoon. My name is Brittany Chiquata, and I'm here on behalf of Supervisor Cohen in support of this resolution adopting CEQA findings for the San Francisco PUC's Sewer System Improvement Program Biosolids Digester Project. So after over 50 years of operating at the existing Southeast plant using technology that dates back to the 1940s, San Francisco is finally updating the water pollution treatment plant. And this is the biggest and most important project of SSIP. We are long overdue in bringing the wastewater treatment plant up to date and addressing the odor and visual impacts that the residents and businesses of Bayview have been burdened with and had to deal with for far too long. So the supervisor is very excited about a technological advancement and with being able to implement something that will not only release the odors but generate 100% renewable energy on site using the wastewater. This update will not only be more energy and water efficient, it'll just be an overall benefit to the community. And so once completed, this project will have a huge improvement for the neighborhood that we support and hope that you will move forward with positive recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And do we also have I think we do have presentations from our SFPUC.
Good afternoon, Chair Tang, supervisors. I'm Karen Kubik. I'm the Sewer System Improvement Program Director from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. The Sewer System Improvement Program is a 20-year investment in our wastewater system, and at this time, $2.9 billion has been authorized. Can we bring the slides up, please? Thank you. Over $2 billion worth of that $2.9 billion that's been authorized will be made, improvements will be made at our Southeast plant in District 10. And the biosolids project, which we're here today about, represents $1.2 billion of that total. Today's item is a request for the adoption of the CEQA findings for the biosolids project and authorization for us to be able to move forward into the construction phase. And I do want to thank Supervisor Cohen for her supportive leadership. She really has been wonderful for this critical project. It's a tough lift. The visions for the improvement at Southeast Plant were developed collaboratively with the community. We had a digester task force. We worked with our Southeast Working Group, also the Southeast Community Facility Commission, and really countless residents have weighed in to support us. It's very important to the PUC that our oldest wastewater treatment facilities are improved, modernized, and brought up to a standard so they will be a neighborhood asset. Improvements were evaluated and planned by looking at the site as a whole. The biosolids project is actually a cornerstone on this site. Let me show you what the property looks like. Here's an aerial. The Southeast plant treats 80% of the city's sewage. The biosolids facility handles the treatment of solids. It's the workhorse of the facility are the digesters, which are shown in the foreground. They're outlined in yellow. Currently, our aged, seismically vulnerable odorous digesters, which were planned in the 40s and started up in the early 50s, they were built directly across from homes, and they are odorous and they are not seismically safe. The new project will be built on 2 parcels that will be incorporated into the plant footprint, allowing the entire facility to be placed in that area that's outlined in blue, set back along the raised Caltrains track. The new facility will apply the best available technology. It'll be more efficient. We're dropping our number of digesters from 9 to 5. The level of treatment will be improved, so we have more opportunities for reuse of biosolids. We will capture the gas that is produced from the treatment process and use that to provide energy to the plant, providing 50% of the plant's needs. We will also make tremendous leaps and bounds with odor control, so all of the air is processed and cleaned within the plant footprint. Here shown in blue is a site layout of what the future will be. The blue tanks in the back, those are the digesters. They'll be located as far from residents as possible. The energy recovery building is shown on the left side below the words Caltrain. And new maintenance buildings will be built along Gerald Avenue, providing a much more neighborhood-friendly frontage. Here is a rendering of how beautiful this will be, transforming the neighborhood in the future. The biosolids project team is completing the design, and we're on target to start construction late summer. I also want to highlight something exciting. The biosolids project was selected for a $625 million loan from the Water Infrastructure and Financing Innovation Act. It's called WIFIA. This is the largest single allocation of funds in this country, and this went through a large permit process. It was very competitive, and what this means is we'll have a lot of low-interest money to preserve low rates for our ratepayers. We are also pursuing a low-interest state revolving loan fund for the balance. With that, let me just give you some of the dates that we have run through. Our draft EIR was published in May. May 2017. We got approximately 20 comment letters. Responses to comments were published in February 2018. The EIR was certified at the Planning Commission March 8th. We raced it to our own commission March 13th, and it was approved there. Next, I want to talk, or lastly, I want to just talk about the SFPUC's commitment to environmental justice. We did complete a separate but complementary environmental justice analysis for the biosolids project. The report looked at 62 environmental socioeconomic indicators and determined through research and community input, including the different groups that I talked to you earlier about, the Citizens Advisory Committee for Wastewater and the Southeast Community Facility. We do have a report that reflects the findings and a summary document, which are on our sfwater.org website. I do have with me David Gray. He's the director of the SFPUC's Environmental Justice Program, and he's here to answer any additional questions. In short, today it's a very exciting day for us because we're here to adopt CEQA findings and request your release of the appropriated funds. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I know this is a long time coming, and congratulations on reaching this milestone here. Colleagues, any questions or comments on this? Okay, seeing none, then we will go to public comment. Any members of the public that wish to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none. All right, so can we have a motion on item 3?
Motion to move forward with recommendation.
All right, we'll do that without objection. Congratulations. All right, item 4, please.
Item number 4 is a resolution establishing local biodiversity as a citywide priority with a framework for interagency collaboration for our nature-based initiatives.
Thank you. And I know we have Debbie Rafael here from SF Environment, but actually first I realize I should start with Supervisor Fewer, the sponsor of the resolution.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Thank you for allowing me to share a few opening remarks. The intent of this resolution is to establish local biodiversity as a citywide priority with a framework for interagency collaboration. As the supervisor of District 1, which is surrounded by 3 natural borders, the ocean, the Presidio, and Golden Gate Park, I am hyper-conscious of the threats to our natural environment with climate change, as well as the President of the United States pushing an agenda for deregulation and dismantling of the EPA. When I was approached by the San Francisco Environment, by SF Environment, to author this resolution, I was happy to do so, given those threats and how much we value our natural environment in San Francisco. It actually took months of planning for this resolution to come together, thanks to the leadership of SF Environment and SF Planning, and it has brought 15 city agencies into the room together to give feedback on this resolution and to discuss what ongoing collaboration will look like between these city agencies. I am happy that this resolution is being supported by the Sierra Club, Livable City, and the Nature Conservancy, among other groups. And I realize that there may be critique of the resolution as well, but I wanted to be clear that the intention is for this resolution to take a step toward a greater commitment to the biodiversity of San Francisco and get city stakeholders in a room together to discuss future actions. I believe this resolution will help to accomplish this goal, and colleagues, I hope to have your support on this resolution today. We have a presentation today from SF Environment and SF Planning, and I know there are other representatives from several city departments in the room today to express support. I'd like to begin with introducing Debbie Rafael, the Director of SF Environment. Oh, hi, Debbie.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for that introduction, Supervisor Fewer, and for sponsoring the resolution. I also want to thank Supervisor Kim for co-sponsoring and for Chair Tang and all of you for hearing the item today. So it seems to me to be a fitting time to celebrate and acknowledge the importance of the city's biodiversity as we kick off Earth Month. From Ocean Beach to Treasure Island, we are gifted with a unique natural environment that's worth protecting. The city has a long history of cherishing its natural heritage and managing its parks and green space for biodiversity. This understanding of the importance of biodiversity requires an ongoing commitment. It's not a one and done. especially as Supervisor Fior acknowledged in her remarks, considering the challenges that we are facing with climate change. At the Department of Environment, we work every day to help San Francisco be both sustainable and healthy for all of its inhabitants, whether they be animal, plant, or human. And we do this work in deep collaboration with our fellow city agencies. We often find ourselves in a role of convener, and I think this resolution speaks to very intentionally to that role. Last year, the Commission on the Environment passed its own resolution in support of the idea of biodiversity. They set forth a vision and a series of goals that they were hoping would be embraced beyond the confines of our department. And so this got us thinking, what would it take to take the kernel that the Commission on the Environment started and grow it into something deeper with roots that go beyond our boundaries and go into each city department one after another. And so the resolution you have before you today is a reflection of that work. And as Supervisor Fior said, this was not something that was put together in a hurry. We spent months working with 15 agencies to answer some of the very questions that may be coming before you today, to solve some of the dilemmas and to make sure that this resolution and the language that's in it is supportive of all beings' importance with respect to access, biodiversity, and habitat protection. We included the large land-owning departments like PUC, like the airport and Rec and Park, and we also acknowledged that smaller departments had a very important role to play as the city looks as itself, how can we support biodiversity? Animal care and control, Department of Children, Youth, and their families, the libraries, all of these agencies, 15 in total, actually have a significant role that they can play to further this goal. And so what you have before you today is a result of the months of work and dialogue, because what we believe is needed right now is a way of formalizing a commitment and challenging city departments to work closely in collaboration to convey their commitment, to inspire action, and to protect and enhance our biodiversity. We've come a long way, and I just want to acknowledge and thank again Supervisor Fior for taking this issue on and for her advocacy of our natural environment. I also want to give a special shout out to Chelsea Boyard for her patience and help in shepherding this along through the months. She is an amazing asset to Supervisor Fior, and we are very grateful for her leadership. I want to thank Supervisor Kim for signing on as a co-sponsor and for her interest in protecting the green spaces of San Francisco in her district and beyond. I would like to thank John Rame, my colleague in the planning department, and his staff, Lisa Fisher, Adam Varat, John Sway, Anne-Marie Rogers. It really took a village to put this together. And all the department heads, all of my colleagues and their staff who contribute their time and collective energy. And finally, as I hand this off, I want to thank my own teammate, Peter Brastow, who is the biodiversity coordinator for our department. There's probably no one with greater passion and tenacity for this subject of making sure our urban realm is designed and nurtured in a way that supports nature. His work in this area has been truly an inspiration for me. And so I'm going to ask Peter now to come up, give you a little bit more context and detail as to what this resolution does and what it doesn't do, so that you can put it in that larger context of the work we must do. And then you will hear from some of our partner agencies in terms of their thinking about this resolution. So, Peter.
Thank you, Debbie. Good afternoon, supervisors. Let me just pull up my presentation here. Okay, so my name is Peter Brastow, and I am the Biodiversity Coordinator at the Department of Environment. I've been there for a little over 5 years, and if I run into you in the hallways, I'll tell you more about my background, but we'll move on. So just quickly, to give very broad context for what we're talking about today, as Debbie pointed out, we are in the midst of a climate crisis, but equally important and urgent is our biodiversity crisis. And this image just shows kind of across the world a schematic of areas both of high biodiversity but also of extreme threat. All of our Mediterranean climate ecosystems, tropical ecosystems, and others, Japan, et cetera, and of course the California Floristic Province, or California, where we are. And scientists today are referring to the current unfolding of this mass extinction, of this biodiversity crisis, as the sixth mass extinction, on par with what was prompted by the asteroid and wiped out the dinosaurs. So this is just kind of bringing it closer to home. I like to bring up this slide because it sets our city, our 7x7, in this kind of natural environmental context of the Bay Area, kind of our biodiversity hotspot within the California biodiversity hotspot, and really kind of paints a nice picture of the diverse physiography and geography and thus the ecology that is throughout our region and in which San Francisco sits. So San Francisco is not just a city, but it's this place that was built upon within this natural environment. And this is an image of our just hot off the press brand new Nature in the City map, the 3.0. And this gives a nice kind of illustration, a snapshot of what we have in San Francisco in terms of our natural biodiversity, despite the fact that 95% of the city basically has been developed. And what was new about this map from our previous versions was that we thanks to my planning department colleague, we put in a layer for the urban forest. So you can see the parks and the natural areas highlighted, and you can see these wonderful illustrations of sort of example species throughout the city. But then you can also kind of see the fabric of the greenery within the built environment that was more stark in our previous versions of this map. And so we really wanted to honor that biodiversity is throughout the city. Yes, it's in our natural areas, it's in our parks, but it's also throughout the urban environment. And so this just gives you some numbers, just to, again, paint a picture of what we're blessed with here in San Francisco throughout the year. This many species of birds can be seen. Incredible number of plants that are still growing here that are native to San Francisco. 7,000 in California, between 400 and 500 just in San Francisco alone, and the city's been as developed as it has. It's truly remarkable. And this is just, you don't have to read this because it's small print, but it's to illustrate that there is a long history of making policy in San Francisco on behalf of our biodiversity, all the way back to the Park Code in 1981. And then most recently, of course, at the end of 2016, where the Joint Planning and Rec and Park Commissions approved the Natural Resource Management Plan, and then which was upheld at the Board of Supervisors in February last year. And so, kind of drawing on that rich history and trying to think about how to, though we have all these different plans and policies that were developed in relationship to biodiversity in San Francisco, they're kind of all over the place, and they're not necessarily, and some of them are not as current as our current thinking. And so as an interagency collaborative over the last several years, we worked on and came up with and posited these 5 goals of biologically rich ecosystems, equitable experience, ecological planning and design, community stewardship, and resilience and sustainability. And these are the 5 goals that our commission on May 23rd of last year passed as part of our Environment Commission resolution to which Debbie spoke. So now that's just some context, and I wanted to now speak very specifically about the current resolution before you. And I think the title sums it up very nicely. It's certainly about celebration, which I just tried to do and which Debbie and I are trying to do for you today, and which you'll hear more about from other speakers. But in addition, it's to elevate biodiversity as a citywide priority, and then to create a framework for collaboration at a high level to encourage and figure out a way for us to get all of our city departments working together collaboratively on behalf of nature and biodiversity in the city. And so this is the vision of a biodiverse San Francisco. I'm just going to read this so that we're all kind of on the same page with what this is about. San Francisco is a place where our local biodiversity thrives in climate-resilient ecosystems that integrate healthy native wildlife and plant habitats throughout our city's physical environment, connecting all San Franciscans to nature daily and inspiring stewardship of our unique natural heritage in every neighborhood. And so in terms of the structure of the resolution, it's basically these 5 clauses. I just read the vision. That's the first, resolve clauses. So there's a whole nice long list of whereas clauses, some of which I touched on. But in terms of what we resolve to do with this resolution, and then the second resolve clause is basically all about collaboration, that the 15 departments, including Department of Environment, we should all be working together toward improving our operations around biodiversity. That the departments should fill out a survey, and we've been working on that. We have a draft already. We've been sharing that around with the departments, and our intention is actually to our first meeting that we have after, with your pleasure, this resolution is passed, we would actually collaboratively finalize that survey so that when we ask departments to talk about what they've done and what they're doing and what they want to do, to do that in a way that's easy and not too burdensome. And then the fourth resolve clause is about how departments can make their commitment. We got a lot of feedback when we were working with departments on the development of this for this section as well. And so there's sort of a menu of choices. As the Department of Environment did in May of last year, a department could bring a resolution to their commission, or they could just make a presentation to their commission. Or they could draft a memo, which they would forward to the Board of Supervisors and the Mayor's office and to the Department of Environment. So a menu of ways for them to articulate what they want to do and how they want to do it. And then finally, the last resolve clause basically lays out a bunch of kind of instructions for the Department of Environment and what we should do, including bringing the survey to the departments, convening departments, figuring out how to do some kind of annual or biannual reporting that's not too burdensome again, and then also to report back to the Board of Supervisors. And so just wanted to reiterate again for a moment what this is about, and in some ways what it's not about, but mostly what it's about. So it's a broad policy statement, and so it basically gives departments the opportunity to develop their strategies for achieving the vision and the goals that we will finalize together. Collaboration again is the major focus, and so all land use and natural resource management decisions, throughout the different big landholding departments still rest within the jurisdiction of those individual agencies. And then there is indeed an emphasis, and this again was per multiple departments who really wanted us to see an emphasis on the at-risk local native plants and animals, the flora, fauna, fungi that are unique to San Francisco, our federally listed species, our rare plants, our natural habitats that we still remarkably have despite the city being as developed as it is. So those are the most at risk, those are the most threatened, those are our contribution to global biodiversity. But meanwhile, it doesn't preclude land. There's a lot of concern about native versus non-native plants. So this doesn't preclude using non-native plants in landscaping. So we encourage people, or we ask people very strongly not to plant with invasive plants, of course, to be creative, of course, in their design, but to make sure that the plants that they plant are climate appropriate. And as I said, non-invasive. And so if those are non-native, that's fine. And there are also plenty of non-native plants that can provide habitat as well. And if you get on the Plant Finder, sfplantfinder.org, you can learn all about those. And so again, just to highlight pictorially the amount of work that went into putting this together, I want to thank all these different departments for supporting this effort and working together collaboratively and really coming to the table. And this type of collaboration is not without precedent. This is a current incredible interjurisdictional, interorganizational collaboration that's titled San Francisco Children and Nature, which City Hall has actually been very supportive of. And it's made up of many of our city agencies, nonprofits, the Park Service, the Presidio Trust. So, and this is specifically around connecting children and families with nature and has a very strong equity foundation as well. And so I'm gonna finish up again by just highlighting sort of the two spheres, one side or the other. So there's the natural environment and the parks, and then there's the built environment as represented by this beautiful green wall there on Scott Street. But what we're trying to do is to create more cohesion, right, and create a more seamless overall physical environment in the city. And so with that, I'm going to introduce my wonderful colleague Lisa Fisher from the Planning Department, who's going to speak on behalf of the Planning Department.
But go ahead. But before you do that, I just wanted to go back to the previous slide because
Sure.
we've gotten a few, not a lot, but just a few concerns about the native versus non-native, and so I just wanted you to kind of repeat that. So. The concerns that I heard was not about new plants per se, but I think there might be some confusion about what might happen to existing non-native plants. And then second, the use of pesticides came up in some of my conversations. So could you address those two concerns?
Yes, I'll address both of those, and when we get to the pesticide question, Debbie might come up and help me because she's long time.
No. We can have her address
Yeah,
pesticide.
for sure.
Yeah.
So with regard to the question about non-native plants, as I said, it does not preclude the use of non-native plants in landscaping. And in terms of what is concerning for land managers and for biodiversity, sometimes we hear, oh, you want to get rid of that because that's non-native, but it's what is concerning are plants that are invasive. So since 19th century, many plants have been brought here, right, from other parts of the world and planted in our botanical garden, in our parks. Many of those just create beauty, not necessarily for habitat. We want to do more of that, but they create beauty and they're not a problem. They're beautiful landscapes that people enjoy. But there's a subset of those plants that come from other parts of the world, and numerically it's a small subset. But those are the ones that we term invasive, and so disproportionately they can cause real harm to our natural environment and to our local biodiversity. So that's what we're concerned about, is those plants.
For a layperson like me, what does invasive plants mean? I mean, it sounds bad, but I just want to understand exactly what that means.
So invasive literally means that these species, because of the nature of their biology, but also because since they came from somewhere else, they don't come with kind of their ecosystem checks and balances, the insects and things that prey upon them, that often they're able to just spread and go out of control. So if there are many places in the city where you can see this, French broom, the yellow flowering shrub, which creates big thickets, that's an example. All kinds of different Mediterranean grasses, where we used to have these rich bunch grasslands throughout California, and now the Golden Hills of California are basically Mediterranean annual grasses that the Spanish began bringing over, right, with the cattle. So that's what invasion means.
Great, thank you.
And would you like me to speak to the pesticide question?
No, whoever you said was the expert on that can answer that.
Oh, that was okay. That's fine. Okay, thank you. All right,
Thank you. And before we proceed, Supervisor Safai has a question as well.
Okay, great.
Just to add on to Supervisor Kim's question, because we did get a flurry of opposition to this at the end, and folks were really focused on page 4, line 8, one of the kind of resolved clauses about the pursuit of opportunities to enhance native biodiversity on city-owned lands that currently harbor indigenous plants and wildlife habitat, or could do so and are not otherwise dedicated to other mandated city uses. So what's that last part, are not otherwise dedicated to other mandated city uses? So because the interpretation that I'm getting from some of the opposition is saying that when open space becomes available, that we're prioritizing natural areas versus parkland, and I don't know if that's a misinterpretation of this resolve, so I just want you to comment on that, please.
Yeah, so again, it's an encouragement, right, to continue to find places where we can restore biodiversity. And I think that language was part of our kind of interdepartmental conversation. So agencies, don't want that to be the only and the highest and the priority, in the sense that their land is for certain uses, and they don't want to be forced or whatever to have to restore habitat there when they might have a different use for it. So it's partly coming from the agencies, that language.
So it's not about returning it to natural areas. It's quite the opposite. It's saying if there's a particular use that city has, then that would be a priority. Yeah,
and there's lots of vacant city land, right, or that's sort of, if you will, derelict or unused, and so much of that could be opened up and be for public access. Some of it should not be for public access if it's already closed off. For example, some of our watershed lands, but in order to promote biodiversity in general and wholly across the city, there are opportunities adjacent to existing natural areas where lands owned by other departments we can look at and say, okay, we can do some habitat restoration here, or we won't because there's another use that another department or the community has decided they think is a higher priority.
The way you said it sounds a little clearer than the way it's written, because it sounds like if you have open space that has native biodiversity and it currently harbor indigenous plants, then you want to continue to expand that unless there's a dedicated city mandated use.
Well, so in the case where there's other city lands that have native habitat that hasn't actually been preserved, right? So there's places where there's lands that are not owned by Rec and Park that have native habitat, that have parts of our original natural heritage in them, and we do want to try to preserve those, whether that part of land gets, and this has been a long-term process that Rec and Park has been administering for decades in terms of, administering an acquisitions list, so looking at city lands, looking at private lands, how should we prioritize acquiring those and bringing those into the Rec and Park system. So it's really just kind of validating that existing process of, but then just kind of highlighting and underscoring that, these places that still have native habitat that are not owned by Rec and Park, we want to pay attention to those, and if we can, try to preserve those.
So I guess go back to my original question, then it seems like there's a little bit of a struggle between park, open space versus natural areas, and is that what you're attempting to do with this particular line item?
So I think you nailed it when you said it's actually the opposite of what the fear was. Mm-hmm. This clause is saying, on the one hand, we have a commitment to try and restore and promote these precious native plants, and on the other hand, we recognize that there are multiple purposes for land, and that sometimes there are predetermined purposes that a city department might have for land that would preclude them from prioritizing biodiversity. So it's actually building flexibility into the system so that if there is an alternative use that is deemed more valuable than preserving the biodiverse natives, city departments have the ability to do that. So you understood it when you said it was actually the opposite of the fear.
Okay.
And if it's not written clearly, that is a fair criticism, and we could look at the wording of that before it goes to the full board if you'd like us to.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I think that seems to be the
fair enough.
The line that's getting the most attention.
Okay, that's fair. And with respect to pesticides, Supervisor Kim. So again, this is a point of often interesting tension in the world of environmentalism, where you have a wish to preserve native species that are under attack from invasives, and sometimes the tool for that is a pesticide, is a chemical. And while that may feel non-intuitive, it is part of the toolkit of our city agencies when they look at how best to preserve sensitive habitats. There is an entire program and system in place to determine what is an appropriate pesticide and when is the appropriate use. That happens within the Department of the Environment through the Commission on the Environment, where we look at each use of pesticides throughout the city. This resolution does nothing to affect that. It simply calls out the fact that we have an additional interest in preserving the biodiversity without getting in the way of, without interfering with public health.
So through the chair, if I may just to clarify and understand. So it's the ordinance calls for pesticides potentially as a tool to, I guess, fight back against invasive plants that are hurting other bio.
Are you talking about the Integrated Pest Management Ordinance, Chapter 3 of the Environment Code?
I don't think I know this as well as you do.
Yeah, of course not. This is not an ordinance, this is a resolution.
So
right?
I'm not going to be able to refer to any section of any code. What the concerns that I had heard was about the use of pesticides, which I think is always an alarming word to hear.
Yep.
Because of the use of chemicals. And so I just want to understand, it just says that it's a potential tool that we can use to, I guess, fight back against invasive plants that are hurting the biodiversity in our open space. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
So we have an Integrated Pest Management Ordinance, that lays out principles for selection of appropriate pesticides as part of an IPM, Integrated Pest Management Program, reduce risk list of pesticides. It has in that what the goals of the city are to preserve public health and habitat, and also to preserve the uses of our public lands. This does not touch that in any way. This is a resolution that says we value biodiversity, period. I think the fear is that, if I may suppose how I interpreted the letters, was that if you raise biodiversity too high, it could be used as a justification for a scorched earth policy to use pesticides in an irresponsible manner.
And I assume, although I don't know, are there other ways to address invasive plants other than pesticides? Okay.
There are, and the Integrated Pest Management Ordinance says very clearly that pesticides are used as a last resort, and so departments need to show all the ways they are trying to avoid pesticide use and using it as a last resort.
Do we actually collect data on instances that the city does use pesticides?
We do. We have very
understanding of-
detailed data.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be helpful to actually know historically what we've done, because that
Sure.
informs what we'll do in the future. And I think if the public sees, hopefully, how sparingly pesticides are used and how it's determined that this is the appropriate use, I think that would just help, sway a little more confidence in the public, because you just hear pesticide and I think immediately
Yes.
alarm bells go off. But if you kind of see historically how the city has dealt with the use of pesticides, it may provide some comfort to folks that are concerned about its usage. And I guess my only last question about this is, do we know if these pesticides are harmful for, I assume, dogs, pets, kids that are running around the area?
So I would assume that any pesticide exposure could be harmful, and so the IPM program does not only dictate what you can use, but how you can use it and when you can use it.
Okay.
So there's notification, there's dyes associated with it, there's timing restrictions, and there's placement. So in parks, in play areas, they're banned. You cannot use a pesticide in a playground. So it would be in other areas where they were allowed that they would be restricted in how they're used.
So one of the concerns might be dogs running around.
Absolutely.
Okay. And it would be great. How would the public access, how often pesticides are used and when they're used, if they are concerned
There
about
is a
that?
publicly accessible database where
Okay.
they can go, and I do not know the URL offhand to say publicly, but
If someone can
Chris-
find that while
we
keep
will do that
going.
while we're doing it, and
Yeah.
we will come back
and I think
with
there'll
you.
be public comment, and so
Yes.
it would just be great for the public, I think, to get insurance in terms of the city's policy and how we've determined it in the past, so it could provide some comfort in terms of ensuring that we
Absolutely.
use it sparingly and only when we have to. And I don't even know what those instances might be, but
Right. And
I'd like to better
I would say
understand
the
that, too.
one thing I'm incredibly proud of the city is the transparency of our use of pesticides. When we do have to use them as a last resort, we own it, we publicize it, and we have an annual public meeting to go over all of the uses with departments in the room. So it's very, very transparent. Chris, do you have of how people? Yes.
Yeah, the URL is sfenvironment.org/IPM. And then you go down to the city section of that page, and you'll see a section on pesticide use trends. And it's an interactive graph. You can look at it in different ways. My name is Chris Geiger. I'm in charge of the citywide integrated pest management program. And I did want to add one little thing,
You
and
say
that is
PP, I'm sorry, sfenvironment.org. What is it? Slash.
sfenvironment.org/IPM for integrated pest management.
I'm going to check it out.
Real time.
Real time. And they have, I just wanted to add that pesticides are indeed a last resort, and for the vast majority of tasks in biodiversity preservation, it's done without pesticides. It's a big volunteer program for digging up French broom, for example. There's a lot of manual removal as well. So.
And so you've decreased your usage of pesticides by 70 to 80% since 1996.
Correct. When the program got instituted, that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and we'll turn it back to Supervisor Fewer.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Supervisor Fewer, I'm sorry, could I introduce Lisa Fisher?
Oh, I was just going to introduce Lisa Fisher.
Oh, thank you.
Senior Urban Planner at the Planning Department. That's great.
Greetings, supervisors and fellow San Franciscans. I'm Lisa Fisher, a senior planner with the Planning Department, Citywide Division, where I lead our Sustainable City Initiative. And this includes topical efforts like biodiversity, as well as the integration of environmental sustainability performance into plan area policies like Central Soma and major development projects, like you might have seen in India Basin along the waterfront, places that really have the opportunity to enhance things like biodiversity. The Planning Department is proud to be wrapping up our 4th biodiversity work order with the Department of the Environment, which includes direct resources and in-kind support from our planning, graphics, and IT staff. And it's been my privilege to serve as project manager and Peter's right hand as we've engaged our agency partners to understand the city's biodiversity needs and opportunities, lead inclusive processes, and co-create useful tools. Thank you to all the department leaders and staff that have contributed and worked with us, and we look forward to more. Some highlights include the sfplantfinder.org tool that Peter mentioned, which is an online database of habitat-supportive and climate-appropriate plants for use by everyone from residents to city staff. And I think just adding on the conversation that we just had, the one goal of this resolution and amplifying our use of native plants and non-invasive plants is that we will kind of get rid of that need to ever have to refer to our integrated pest management ordinance. We also have developed a biodiversity training module to enable city staff and the private sector to best use a biodiversity lens in their work. We're developing biodiversity guidelines to help standardize our direction to project sponsors, and we've been proud to be part of policy tools like this citywide resolution, and we offer our support today. Our department's commitment to biodiversity is inspired on many levels. We feel that connecting with nature daily is a basic human need that enhances quality of life and happiness. Greening may be realized in all of our urban forms. We're very excited about that. Our parks, our plazas, yards, sidewalks, streets, building facades, rooftops, and as the city grows, densifies, and warms, the quality of our shared open spaces will be even more critical. Planting standards that support biodiversity also support our broader sustainability aims, such as water conservation and quality, healthier air, and environmental justice, and especially as these elements are further stressed by climate change. So our support for this biodiversity resolution at the citywide level can be summarized in 5 main points. First, our shared assessment of existing biodiversity policies and programs revealed the potential value of a more cohesive San Francisco statement. Second, the city is seeing more pavement turned today than ever before, and there's an urgency to build with best practices. And this includes maximizing co-benefits of these projects, such as open space, neighborhood greening, and cleaner air for our communities, and especially with focused efforts on cost-neutral improvements. For example, greening with the right types of plants. Third, we are fortunate that countless acres of new public parks and open spaces are being planned and designed in the grayer neighborhoods of our city, along our bayshore and in major inland areas, not to mention new private open spaces and green roofs. We've been proud to work in Central Soma, where our new regulation on green roofs will create almost 20 acres of biodiversity supportive greening. As we work with project sponsors and fellow departments on the design and quality of our physical environments, institutionalizing key city values like biodiversity within the San Francisco project process will help us leverage these opportunities towards a greener city. Integrating ecological systems in our grayer engineered environments also helps improve our resilience and ensures a healthy future for all San Franciscans. Finally, we hope that elevating biodiversity to a citywide priority will help enhance coordination between departmental and citywide resources and open new pathways for implementation and maintenance funding for integrating more nature into our public spaces. Thank you so much for your consideration. The Planning Department looks forward to continuing our support of biodiversity and also seeking opportunities to integrate it with other city priorities like housing, transportation, and equity. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we take public comment, I'd like to call up Tim Ramirez, the Director of Natural Resources for the SFPUC.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Tim Ramirez. I'm the Division Manager for Natural Resources and Lands Management at the SFPUC. We're here to support the resolution. We have and continue to work very closely with our Department of the Environment colleagues and the other city departments on managing our properties in San Francisco to protect and restore native biodiversity. In particular, we work very closely with the Rec and Park Department and their amazing Natural Resources Division staff, and I think we'll hear from Lisa Wayne in just a few minutes. Just very quickly, from our perspective, our commission has adopted a 2020 strategic plan that includes 6 goals. One of them is focused on environmental stewardship, and a big part of that is protecting and restoring native biodiversity. The water enterprise has also adopted an environmental stewardship policy, and we just gave our first full report to our commission, not by coincidence, about 2 weeks ago. The resolution is also consistent with our wastewater capital program to create more green infrastructure to assist with stormwater management in San Francisco. And we look forward to continuing to work with our city colleagues and our city department friends and bring the experience that we have managing properties outside of San Francisco as land managers to this effort here in San Francisco. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to call up Lisa Wayne, Natural Resources Manager for Rec and Park.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Lisa Wayne. I'm the Natural Resources Manager with the San Francisco Recreation and Park Department. Thank you for supporting and considering this resolution, and I also want to extend a thanks to our colleagues at the Planning and the Department of the Environment for all the heavy lifting that they did on this as well. The San Francisco Recreation and Park Department has been promoting biodiversity in open spaces by restoring and protecting nature and wildlife habitats throughout urban parks for decades. In February 2017, the Recreation and Park Department received the support of the Board of Supervisors to affirm the environmental impact report for the department's Significant Natural Resource Areas Management Plan. This plan is a roadmap for the Recreation and Park Department that guides the protection of the city's natural resources and wildlife habitats and provides opportunities for human connections with local nature via recreation, education, and stewardship. And to build on the momentum of this effort, we support this resolution and the efforts to formally adopt a policy stance on local biodiversity for the city and county of San Francisco. Moving forward, the Recreation and Park Department's Natural Resources team will be continuing to implement our Natural Resource Management Plan and to work on the conservation of endemic species, including threatened and endangered species such as the California red-legged frog, the endangered mission blue butterfly, and others, as well as the restoration of native landscapes such as the old-growth oak woodlands. In addition, the department has also trained and certified more than 100 gardeners in bay-friendly landscape practices, which aim to promote biodiversity and environmentally sustainable landscape practices in our parks, open spaces, and squares, where possible. The department is actively implementing native plant landscapes in parklands and park improvements to sustain and increase biodiversity and to nurture and retain more than 150 species of pollinators in the San Francisco Bay Area. Once again, the Recreation and Park Department supports the Department of the Environment and the efforts to elevate conservation and biodiversity and the adoption of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we also have Michael Lambert from the San Francisco Public Library come up? Thanks.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Michael Lambert, your acting city librarian. I'd like to thank you, Supervisor Feuer and Supervisor Kim, for sponsoring the San Francisco Biodiversity Policy. The San Francisco Public Library values our partnership with SF Environment, and we're eager to do our part in establishing biodiversity as a citywide priority. With 28 library locations spread throughout the city, and with the leadership of our Stegner Environmental Center librarian, Kelly Trahan, we feel that we are well positioned to collaborate with our city and county partners on nature-based initiatives. The library can help promote the equitable experience and awareness of San Francisco's biodiversity and responsible access and stewardship of nature through our public library programs. The San Francisco Public Library looks forward to completing our own department biodiversity survey and further developing our biodiversity strategies and initiatives. Thank you for all your support.
Thank you very much. And now can we hear from Carol Bach, the Environmental and Regulatory Affairs Manager for the Port of San Francisco?
Good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Carol Bach, Environmental Affairs Manager for the Port, and I'm here on the Port's behalf to express our support for the biodiversity resolution. The initiatives that brought forth the resolution are consistent with the Port's core values. They're consistent with the work that we're already doing. We echo these goals in our Port strategic plan, including our environmental sustainability goal, which calls us to protect bay and shoreline habitats. Additionally, we've recently completed the second of 3 phases of our waterfront land use plan update process. We've been having public meetings for a year and a half and have had a specific subcommittee of the Waterfront Land Use Plan Working Group dedicated to environmental sustainability. And it's perhaps serendipitous that this subcommittee produced 20 recommendations regarding environmental sustainability, of which 4 specifically addressed the desire to promote ecological function and biodiversity in our port projects. Additionally, the Waterfront Land Use Plan Working Group presented goals for equity throughout its process, including equitable access to the waterfront's assets, such as jobs, recreation, and access to nature was specifically called out as a policy recommendation. I think the biodiversity resolution will serve all of these objectives. And I'd like to thank our colleagues at Department of the Environment for working with the various city departments who have really different missions, different jurisdictions, and different kinds of resources to tailor a resolution that could fit all of us. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open up to public comment now. I will call names. Denise Louie, Brian Tachabana, Mary Ellen Hannibal, Vicki Evans, and Bob Hall. Please line up, and you have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Denise Louie. I wanted to start with a definition of the word biodiversity. It was coined by renowned scientist E.O. Wilson, who referred to natural assemblages of plants and wildlife. And that's important to me because I'm interested in native plants. As a member of the California Native Plant Society, I can tell you there are hundreds of plants native to San Francisco. So when you want to plant something that is drought tolerant in your garden, think about the local native plants, not just, those non-native succulents, please. Okay, so one of the reasons that it really does matter what we have in our gardens is that, a few months ago, a professor from San Francisco State University explained that according to the historical records, San Francisco had 9 species of local native bumblebees, 9 species. 2 of them for sure have gone extinct, and another 2 are suspected of having gone extinct because we haven't seen them for a while. 4 out of 9 going extinct on our watch, and we're just talking about bumblebees. Well, our plants need pollinators, and our pollinators need our help. And the wildlife do best with native plants, so I encourage everyone to think about planting local native plants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi there. My name is Mary Ellen Hannibal. I'm a long-time resident of San Francisco and a journalist and author. I've written 5 books, mostly about nature and science, and hundreds of articles on nature and science. I, in fact, was the writer on the map that Peter showed of nature in the city. And I'm very excited about this resolution and this idea. One of the things I've learned as a writer on this subject is that one thing nature needs to persist is something called connectivity. So just as the previous speaker alluded to pollinators needing plants, plants and animals need each other in relationship, and they also need space across space to be able to move across space, to go from one place to another, to renew their genetic inheritance with others of their own kind, and also to migrate, to rest, and to reproduce. So what are some of the things that are in the way of saving nature today, which is under siege in a very dire way? Connectivity. And it turns out that actually the lack of connectivity among human institutions is one of the big problems. So we have all of these fantastic initiatives and incredible achievements in San Francisco to bring back native species, to restore ecosystems, to integrate new exotic species with native species, and to create more and more beautiful nature that characterize our beautiful city. But we have all of these different agencies and different jurisdictions that often don't know what each other are doing, and they don't coordinate with each other. So to me, this is a fantastic opportunity to really amplify nature by amplifying the connectivity among human institutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Becky Evans here on behalf of the Sierra Club. We support this resolution. It's really pleasing to be here and see the cooperation evidenced by the people from the different city departments. I'm particularly impressed by the fact that the San Francisco Children and Natures Program includes the Presidio Trust and the National Park Service, because there's a very large swath of San Francisco's public open space which is actually under the guidance of the federal government. I hope you will support this. I think it's a good start. We've got a way to go, and I think it's a good thing for the Department of Environment and the city to be doing during this incredible time of pressure on our public lands. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors and fellow citizens. My name is Ryan Tachibana, Youth Programs Coordinator with nonprofit organization Literacy for Environmental Justice. The biodiversity of our city is directly related to the well-being of all living organisms within it, including us. Biodiversity is the foundation of the ecosystem services that clean the air we breathe, protect our homes from rising sea levels, and ultimately provide a healthier tomorrow for our children and future generations. It's important more than ever to connect the people of San Francisco to our city's natural wonders and educate our communities about the values of biodiversity. I support our biodiversity resolution, and I appreciate the city investing in a healthier tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll call a couple of names. Greg Garr, Nadine Whale, Lou Stringer, Jake Sig. And I believe I called Bob Hall also. Hi, Bob. Come on up.
Yeah, Bob Hall here, passionate San Francisco enthusiast and wildlife enthusiast. Across the United States, city managers always look to San Francisco to lead on tough issues. San Francisco is a no-excuses, can-do city. We lead on public health care. We led on gay marriage, and San Francisco is the first and only city in the United States where all residents have access to a park within a 10-minute walk. And now we must lead on protecting the foundation of life on Earth. No sweat, right? Although concern about threats to species diversity tend to focus on large species such as bald eagles, threats to the biodiversity of small organisms are the same or of greater importance. Small organisms are often more specialized and adapted to certain plant species and habitats than are the large animals, and therefore they are more susceptible than large animals to extinction. San Francisco has remnant habitats in decline that harbor these small organisms. We need policies that protect them. Species support biological production and regulation through the food chain in a variety of ways, such as adding to the soil fertility, pollination, plant growth, predation, and waste decomposition. The more diverse an ecosystem is, the more stable it is, the more productive it tends to be, and the better it is to withstand environmental stress. So I encourage you to adopt these great policies that you're putting forward today, and please make San Francisco proud and have all the other cities look at us again as a leader.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Greg Garr. I've lived in San Francisco all my life. I volunteer in the parks and open spaces to battle the weeds that are displacing our native plant communities. It's important to realize that this planet is the only place in the universe that we're aware of where life exists. And biodiversity is the barometer that determines how healthy this planet is. We don't want to lose this precious planet and the life that it has produced, but as things are going, if you look at the history of the Bay Area, which is a microcosm of the entire planet, in 250 years, we've gone from one of the richest ecosystems on the face of the earth to just remnants of what existed here 250 years ago, where there were grizzly bears, mountain lions, great herds of elk and deer, a much larger bay, which has, much of it has been filled in. The tidal marshes have been destroyed. But now we are aware of how to restore these areas. And it's very spiritually rewarding to go out and restore an area and see the butterflies and the birds return. In San Francisco, we have the Natural Areas Program, we have the National Park Service and the Presidio, and there's so many opportunities to get involved in stewarding the land. So I hope that you will support this biodiversity resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name's Lou Stringer. I'm the Associate Director of Natural Resources at the Presidio Trust and a proud partner of many of the city's efforts restoring biodiversity throughout the city. I'm here to read a letter on behalf of our Chief Executive Officer, Gene Frazier, who writes, I am writing on behalf of the Presidio Trust in strong support of the proposed city biodiversity resolution. The Presidio of San Francisco is a biodiversity hotspot within the city of San Francisco and a member of the United Nations, the UNESCO Golden Gate Biosphere Reserve. The Trust shares the city's goals of preserving the area's diverse biological resources and partners with the city on a number of efforts in support of biodiversity stewardship. The Trust also recognizes there is a great urgency to address the loss of biodiversity, as much of San Francisco's remaining natural heritage is threatened. The City Biodiversity Resolution will support existing biodiversity enhancement efforts by providing a unified vision, enhancing interagency collaboration, completing a survey of current work of biodiversity and strategies going forward to increase efforts, collaboration, and partnership. Articulating a commitment to local nature conservation through commission resolutions or presentations, and outlining a specific framework for the Department of the Environment to convene the departments on a regular basis to move forward and establish reports and accountability. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Jake Sigg, speaking for the local chapter of the California Native Plant Society. I'm glad to see San Francisco once again in the lead on questions of the environment. Even though the public is rather vague on what biodiversity is, the actual fact is they're all in favor of it. Variety is the spice of life, as everyone knows. The current issue of The Guardian of London has this on the front page. It's a major story this week. And another publication, English publication I subscribe to, The Economist, which is, just like it sounds, a business paper. They're paying attention to this too, because they recognize what's at stake. This is titled, A Crisis in the Natural World. Major biodiversity study reveals how runaway resource exploitation threatens water and food security for billions. Human destruction of nature is rapidly eroding the world's capacity to provide food, water, and security to billions of people, according to the most comprehensive biodiversity studies in more than a decade. Such is the rate of decline and risks posed by biodiversity loss should be considered on the same scale as those of climate change, noted the authors. Among the major findings are the exploitable fisheries of the world, most populous region, the Asian Pacific, are on course to decline to zero by 2048. And so on. It goes on much more. Thank you.
I will call up two more names, Kelly Trahan and Ori Hartenstein. And then I think we have Nadine Will.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Kelly Trahan. I manage the Environmental Center at the San Francisco Public Library. Each day, I have the privilege of serving library patrons who care deeply for the environment. The library is proud to support this biodiversity policy and its vision to connect all San Franciscans to nature and to inspire stewardship of our unique natural heritage. While San Francisco's biodiversity is impressive, we know it faces significant challenges. The library's vision includes the provision of free and equal access to information for our diverse community. As part of this vision, the library is excited to continue our partnership with the Department of Environment to bring information to the public and to provide educational programs to help preserve, restore, and enhance nature where we live for ourselves and generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Ori Hartenstein. I'm an intern with the San Francisco Department of Environment, and I'm here with my co-intern as well. I was wondering if maybe we could split the 2 minutes between each other. Thank you. So, I'm just very proud to see the city taking this policy in consideration, considering the current administration that we have, and even hearing you all speak of that as well and recognizing that. San Francisco serves an example not nationally only, but also globally. So I'm really happy to see that, and I'm sure the world as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to quote a Native American proverb that says, "We aren't inheriting this land from our ancestors, but we are borrowing it from our children." So just think about it, and I think we need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public speakers? Please.
Hello, my name is Nadine Weil, the Executive Director of the Thornton Foundations, dedicated to the environment. We are huge fans of the Department of the Environment and Debbie. We are concerned that this biodiversity resolution will threaten public safety unless amended. We would be grateful if the committee could please consider 4 small amendments. 1, please add a 1-to-1 tree replacement rate. Right now, any trees felled under this policy will fall through the cracks, causing deforestation and climate change. Climate change is the #1 threat to biodiversity. 2, please add back the urban forest plan. It was in the original resolution twice. Other plans like Green Connections are still in, but the urban forest plan was deleted. Please add it back, as trees are our best defense against climate change. 3, please ensure that this will not lead to any incremental Tier 1 pesticide use. Applications of glyphosate increased 411% last year because of biodiversity policies just like this one. Other cities like Seattle and Portland have pesticide-free parks, where San Francisco is falling further behind. These pesticides are poisoning our children, our land, and our biodiversity, including monarch butterflies. 4, please add back non-invasive, non-native plants to the biodiversity vision on page 3. The Environment Commission wanted to make sure this was not just about native plants. They voted to include, quote, non-native, non-invasive, climate-appropriate plants. Somehow this phrase has been deleted and the agenda has become narrow. It mentions native plants 6 times in 4 pages. This is overly prescriptive and could unleash toxic.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Anastasia Glickenstein or Glickentera?
Glickstern doesn't matter.
Thank you.
First of all, I brought 2 letters from San Francisco Forest Alliance. You might have received them by email or might have not. You might have not read them, I don't know. Please include it in the meeting minutes. I'm here to oppose this resolution, and the main reason is because biodiversity in the city of San Francisco is totally, completely, inseparably connected to highly toxic herbicides. And those are herbicides. Those things kill plants, and there is absolutely no need, no possible need to use them. This book was published in October of last year. I only started reading it recently. It's called The Story of Weed Killer, Cancer, and Corruption of Science. It only talks about Roundup, and this Roundup was just used on March 7th on Mount Davidson, together with 2 other very toxic herbicides. The herbicides are used all the time, all the time. Last year in natural areas, the use have risen by 50%. They were used on Mount Davidson 17 times, in Glen Park 30 times, and people just have no idea that it's done. Like I tell people, and they have no clue. Those who knows are only those who have dogs and walk all the time and pay attention to the science. It's totally unacceptable and has to be banned. It cannot go. Like there is no responsible use of those things. They are not needed. They are not healthy. Even 1 drop used is too much. They cannot be used as last resort. They're not appropriate. Reduced list from what? I mean, from carpet bombing, from much more toxic herbicides. It's not reduced from not using those herbicides. So it should be banned. Please reject this stupidity, and please do.
Thank you very much. Any more public comment? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Colleagues?
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Feuer, and thank you to everyone who came out to speak on this. So at this time, then, public comment is closed. And do we have a motion before us? Supervisor Kim?
Were you set to talk?
I just made a request. Supervisor Kim.
I'm just hoping that if staff could interface with Nadine and some other folks just to clarify the non-invasive, non-native plant deletion, and so what that actually means and what it doesn't. I think that would just be helpful because that comment came up again.
Yeah,
and also, could someone address the data point that she had pulled up, which was that there was actually an increase of this one specific type of pesticide between, I think, 2016 and 2017, and the concept of pesticide-free parks that other cities have implemented?
Hello, Chris Geiger, Department of the Environment. I manage the citywide integrated pest management program. That data, I'm not sure where it came from because we have not quality checked our data through March at this point in time. I did notice on their graph that it said number of applications. It was not about pounds of active ingredient. We have never used that as a metric. Actually, sometimes the number is better to have high means that you're doing more targeted application, but I do not know where that number comes from. Our numbers had shown about a 95% reduction in Tier 1 use since 2010, and with Rec Park in particular, in 1 year since the beginning of new restrictions, in the wake of new data on Roundup, they reduced their use by 81% in 1 year. So I really salute city staff on their progress on this.
Okay, great. And do we do something similar where we have pesticide-free parks? I assume from what I heard from Ms. Raphael that playgrounds and certain areas dedicated to children are always pesticide-free.
Yeah, we have a set of specific restrictions on herbicide use that includes playgrounds and a lot of other areas.
And is that list public and available?
Yes.
And where is that available? So
that's it's on that same
link.
page. It's called the Reduced Risk Pesticide List.
Has a list of all the open space and parks where we have prohibited any use of pesticide.
It does not have a list of specific sites. It's organized as restrictions. So, for example, no treatment on playgrounds or within 15 feet of paths and things like that. So it doesn't actually divide it up by geography. It's about function.
So we don't have any parks that are quote unquote pesticide free.
Well, actually, we don't have them denoted as such, but if you look at the history of pesticide use in the city, almost half, I think it's somewhere around 40%, had not had any herbicide use since 2010. So even though they may not be designated as such, the staff have done a really good job of minimizing use.
There's different ways of talking about the pesticide use, and we felt that what those cities that have pesticide-free parks, then they have a whole bunch of parks that don't have those restrictions. What we said is, I don't care where the park is, if there's a play area, you cannot use pesticides. 15 feet from any path, you cannot use pesticides. So because we have so many parks, rather than name them all, they all have the same requirements. And then we also have data that shows the historic applications of pesticides, and you can see that most of the parks, regardless, do not.
Yeah. No, the answer was
sufficient.
Sufficient. No, I just know sometimes the public feels safer knowing this named park will never get pesticide, but I understand the approach that you've taken. So, and that answer satisfies me. Thank you. Okay.
Supervisor Safai.
I just want to go back to my original request of page 4, line 8, and I just want to ask the city attorney and Department of Environment if you can work on some language between now and.
I actually have some language. Would you like me to offer it? Would that be cleaner, or do you want to wait?
Sure.
Okay. So if you go to that page 4, it's line 8. We would propose, and let me know, Supervisor, if this clarifies, pursuit of opportunities to enhance native biodiversity on city-owned lands unless those lands are dedicated to another mandated city use.
I think that reads a lot better.
Yeah, it gets rid of the whole middle part.
Thank you. And did our Deputy City Attorney catch that as well? Okay. Thank you. In our clerk's office. Okay.
If you could provide that in writing to me, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that suggestion. All right. So seeing no other questions, comments, then maybe we can get a motion on item 4.
So Supervisor Kim, or do you want me to do it? Can we?
First, a motion to amend.
I'd like to make a motion to amend as proposed by the Department of Environment, read into the record.
Okay.
Page 4, line 8 through 10.
Okay. We'll do that without objection. And then on the amended item.
And then send this item to the full board with positive recommendation as amended.
All right. We'll do that without objection as well. Thank you very much, everyone. And Mr. Clerk, are there any other items before us today?
That completes the agenda for today.
Okay. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Yeah. Thank you.